For our second lesson in section 5.7, again, we want to graph a system of inequalities. If you look at the equations on this worksheet, notice that they're not in the form y equals mx plus b. So we want to go ahead and put them in that form first, so then we can go ahead and graph our lines accurately. So let's take a look at problem number 1. In problem number 1, my first line is x plus 2y is less than negative 2. X plus 2y is less than negative 2. To get the y by itself, I'm going to move the unattached part first, which is the x. So let's subtract x from both sides, and you're left with 2y is less than negative x minus 2. Then we want to divide everything by 2. And so our first equation is y is less than negative 1/2 x minus 1. To graph this line, we're going to start down at negative 1 on the y-axis. And if I have a slope of negative 1/2, I'm going to travel down 1 and forward 2. And I can travel that a couple times. My inequality is a less than, which means that it's going to be a dotted line. And less than is underneath, so I'm just going to, if you want to, you can write the word under or put a little dot. Now let's take a look at our second line. So our second line is the line 5x plus 2y is less than or equal to 6. So this time I want to go ahead and subtract the 5x from both sides. And I'm left with 2y is less than or equal to negative 5x plus 6. Now you want to get the y by itself, so divide everything by 2. And our second line is y is less than or equal to negative 5/2 x plus 3. This one is going to start up at 3 on the y-axis and has a slope of negative 5/2. So let's travel down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. This would be a solid line because it's less than or equal to, and less than is underneath this line as well. So if I want to be both under the pink line and under the green line, then my overlap would be this section here, where I'm under both lines. So there's question number 1. Now let's take a look at the same idea for question number 2. For question number 2, our first equation is 5x plus 2y is greater than or equal to 6. To get y by itself, I'm going to subtract the 5x from both sides. That leaves us with 2y is greater than or equal to negative 5x plus 6. Then divide everything by 2. And very similar to the line that we just had, we have y is now greater than or equal to negative 5/2 x plus 3. So there's our top line. We're going to start up at 3 on the y-axis and travel down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. It's a solid line since it's greater than or equal to, and greater than this time is above the line. So let's write above. Now let's take a look at our second line. We've got x minus 2y is greater than or equal to 6. We want to get our y by itself, which means that we're going to start off by subtracting x from both sides. That leaves you with negative 2y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 6. We are dividing by a negative. So if I divide both sides by a negative, that means I have to flip the inequality around. So now y is less than or equal to negative 1 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1/2 x, and 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So our second line is going to start down at negative 3 on the y-axis and has a slope of 1/2, so up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. It's also a solid line since it's a less than, and that would be under. So if I want to be both above the green line and under the orange line, then that's going to be this region right here, where I'm over the green line and under the orange line. Moving on to question number 3. Again, I have to start by putting my equations in the correct form. So let's start off with our first equation. X minus 3y is greater than 6. We want to subtract the x from both sides. And that gives us negative 3y is greater than negative x plus 6. Again, we're dividing by a negative. So if I have to divide everything by a negative, then y, flip the inequality, is less than 1/3 x minus 2. So there's my first line. I want to do the same thing for my second line. Sorry for a pause in there. I had to let the dog out. All right, so for my second line, we've got 4x plus 3y is greater than or equal to 9. We want to go ahead and get our x by itself, so let's subtract 4x from both sides. We're left with 3y is greater than or equal to negative 4x plus 9. Let's divide everything by 3. And our second line is y is greater than or equal to negative 4/3 x plus 3. Now we want to graph our two lines. My first line starts down at negative 2 on the y-axis and has a positive slope of 1/3. So I'm going to go up 1 over 3. When I draw this line in, it's a dotted line since it's just a less than. And less than is under the line, so I'm going to write under. Now for my second line, it starts up at 3 on the y-axis and has a slope of negative 4/3. So I want to travel down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3. This would be a solid line because it's greater than or equal to. Greater than is above the line. So I want to be both above the blue line yet below the green line, and so that would be this region right there. Looking at one more, question number 4. So for question number 4, let's start off with our first equation. X plus y is greater than negative 2. And let's get that y by itself. For this one, all I have to do is subtract x from both sides, and we get that y is greater than negative x minus 2. So I can go ahead and go down to negative 2 on the y-axis and travel my slope of negative 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Now this guy is going to be a dotted line because it's just greater than. And greater than is above, so I'm going to write above the green line. For my second line, we're going to start off with 2x minus y is greater than or equal to negative 1. Let's get that y by itself. So start by subtracting the 2x from both sides. And you've got negative y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 1. Notice that you're dividing by a negative. So if I divide everything by a negative, then I'm going to have y is, flip that inequality around, less than or equal to 2x plus 1. Start at 1 on the y-axis and travel a slope of 2, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. This would be a solid line since it's a less than or equal to, and less than is under. So we want to be both above the green line and under the blue line, and that would be this region here. Now it's your turn to practice. On the back side, or on the second sheet, you want to go ahead and try questions 5 through 10. Put them first into y equals mx plus b, and then graph each of your overlaps.